There it
Hello,
goes.
ladies and gentlemen. I am Professor Christopher McLaughlin, and this is The Ghost Show. Cost us $1.7 billion.
Love it. Love it.
That's
Love it.
Thank you. That's where all our COVID money. So thank you. Well, hello everybody. Thank you for joining us this evening. I am Professor Christopher McLaughlin, and among other things, I am the creative pit boss of Ghost Show Press, a small but mighty voice in the field of film commentary and creator rights, where we feel dedicated to speak up for underrepresented, underserved films to bring them to people's attention, and to give the writers who want to talk about them the support and freedom that they need to be the creators they deserve to be. And thus far, we have put out not one, but two actual books. You can see this is not CGI. There you go, see? Actual books that do exist. Our first one, Transgressive Horror, which shockingly about horror, and Subversive Sci-Fi, which, no lie, it is about sci-fi and it is subversive. And we just recently successfully kickstarted our third book, Fantastic Flops, where we speak up for films that failed with critics, audiences, or both, and why they didn't necessarily deserve the fate that they got. So it's really us trying to love cinema's unloved children. So there you go. It was a very, very, very close to my heart project. And we funded successfully, and we are very, very, very blessed tonight to have with us one of the main reasons that we funded our longtime and dear friend Skip Morton, aka Uncle Bingo. Yes, just like it took years to find out who Deep Throat was, we can now confirm after many, many, many years that the reason why you never saw him and Uncle Bingo in the same place at the same time. Yeah, he jumped up at a time when we really seriously needed the support, all the way up to our craziest backer level, the one that I put on there thinking no one would ever sign up for it. But lo and behold, Skip rode to our rescue. So what do you say to a guy that you owe everything to, and then he does something else? You owe him everything plus one, I guess. So thank you for that, Skip. So welcome to the show.
No problem. And of course, Chris and I were roommates in college, so I've seen him in his underwear. So, I mean, where do you go from that?
Well, you did someplace that could cure your temporary hysterical blindness, I would think. And the great proof that my life has been far more blessed than I ever imagined is not friends like Skip, and also longtime friends like Lynn Firestone Hill, who's in the other Brady Bunch grid, and not only was Lynn part of our Radford University running crew, Lynn is now one of my go-to and most critically acclaimed writers. You can find her critically acclaimed piece on Ghost in the Shell here in Subversive Sci-Fi, and her barbecue good essay on Midsummer in Transgressive Horror. And she is also rocking one of my favorite movies, The Curse of the Cat People, in Fantastic Flop. So Lynn, welcome. Thank you for bringing your awesomeness tonight.
Glad to join you. It's always good to have these little mini Radford reunions, and I'm super happy to be involved and very happy I can help.
Oh, that's great. That's great. So our topic tonight, which was suggested by Skip, and not coincidentally, is also terrific. I thought a really, really excellent idea for a show. So Skip, since it was your idea, I'll hand the floor over to you. You want to tell the folks what we're going to start off talking about tonight?
Well, it kind of dawned on me, just kind of, thinking about the flops that have been out there and some of the movies that I've enjoyed that really haven't been critically successful, are mostly fantasy. And if you look at it, there are a lot of fantasy flops that should not have been. But that just dawned on me. It's like, well, that would be something good to talk about, just to kind of touch on some of those movies that had the potential to really do well and didn't. Either the audience wasn't there, the critics weren't there, Siskel and Ebert hated it. It's just or a combination thereof. So I was just thinking, well, that would be a good thing to talk about. And fantasies, next to horror, fantasies, one of my true loves. So that's why I picked that topic. And there's a lot a lot of meat on those bones, as I was saying.
Indeed. All righty. So, do you want to? Do you want somebody want to throw out a particular favorite flop or a factor that might be involved in all this? Kick us off.
I can go ahead and do that.
Go ahead.
Please. Even before we went on camera here, we were kind of talking. We were talking about the Dungeons and Dragons movie. We'll just take that because that was recently out. To me, just kind of looking at, I read some of the reviews before I went. I was going to go see it anyway, because I'm a big D&D player. So I started reading the reviews, and they're like, yeah, this is bad, this is bad, this is bad. And I'm like, okay, well, let me go see it myself. So I went and saw it. And to me, as a gamer, as a longtime D&D player since the Carter administration, it looked to me like you were watching people play Dungeons and Dragons, which is to me what the movie should have been about anyway. You're watching, like, they had the jokes, the action, the heroic, things like that, all the cool spells and monsters and that you wanted to see in a true Dungeons and Dragons movie. And the audience just wasn't there for it. And it just kind of tanked, and it really shouldn't have. I don't know if it was you've been in the gaming industry, Chris. There was a lot of hubbub about I can't remember off the top of my head, but just like where you get the license and everything for independent stuff to write for Dungeons and Dragons, kind of dropped all before the movie hit. I don't know if that had anything to do with it, the IPO or whatever. I can't remember. Yeah,
good not help.
Yeah, and it was just really weird because the people who are gamers really, really love that. And there's a lot of gamers out there, believe me or not. And it's just, Chris Pine was great as a bard. It just starting with that one, that's one that just leaps into my head right now. I don't know if people were thinking this is going to be the next Lord of the Rings or Game of Thrones, but it would.
Too much fun.
I don't think it should have been. Yeah, it was supposed to be a fun movie.
It was yes. Game of Thrones and Lord of the Rings. I haven't seen Game of Thrones because I read it and I don't want to see any of that. But but with Lord of the Rings, they had their moments. The hobbits are funny, but the rest of the story is quite serious. Whereas the D&D movie was much more lighthearted. And I don't know, maybe the tone put some people off. I don't know. I hang out with so many gamers and so many nerds. Everybody I know that has seen it loved it. So I am, no kidding, baffled that the movie didn't do well because it was awesome. I had so much fun at that movie. It was such a, it's like a movie I could put on in the background just to keep myself company. It was that kind of a movie, a friendly, warm, welcoming movie. And I loved it. I loved it. I'm mystified.
But I was also thinking at it's, we back when we were young, and I do this to my daughter all the time. Back when we were young,
back in the early Pleistocene, right?
Yeah, and she just rolls her eyes like, "Oh gosh, here comes another Skip story." But we had to basically hide in the basement to play Dungeons and Dragons, and if we brought our books to school, people were going to beat us up for our lunch money. And now you've got Critical Role, you've got everything out there that has put Dungeons and Dragons in the mainstay of America and all over the world now. And again, with that base, that audience, it should have done a lot better than what I don't know if it's what the critics were, but it just really surprised me with all the fan base out there that there wasn't more of a support for the movie.
Well, you did mention one thing that I think is probably Well, I don't know. I haven't done enough reading to know for sure how big of an impact it was, but for
Mhm.
sure Hasbro did the absolute best they could to shoot themselves in the foot right
Yeah.
before that came out with all of the changes to the OGL that
Yeah.
happened right before the movie came out. It's like, I've got an idea. Let's alienate everyone who likes us. Yeah, it's just mind-boggling to me how tone deaf they have been with their own property. I mean, it's
Mhm.
why wouldn't they want it to be successful? Why wouldn't they? It's like the people who are making the money decisions genuinely haven't the first clue what they own.
Mhm.
And I don't know. I find it very disappointing. I mean, I don't suppose it's surprising, really, but I do find it disappointing. I mean, it's not hard to just do a little research if you can just get your head out of your stereotype, your
Mhm.
your prejudgment of what D&D is. And most likely the executives are people like us, people who used to beat up nerds instead of the nerds, but people like
Mhm.
us in terms of the same age group we are.
Right.
And and they were not the gamers. The
Mhm.
business people tended to be like you go into business because you can't major in football. um, anyway,
Mhm.
maybe I'm showing my prejudice here. I think I'll stop talking now. But you know what I'm saying. They don't they
Mhm.
don't get it. They don't get it.
No. Mm-mm.
Well, I have some theories, and one of the great things about being tenured is I can be dreadfully wrong and there are no consequences. But that's the great advantage of being surrounded by dear old friends. If I'm wrong, I'm sure you all will gently let me know, and we'll love each other at the end. So it's a
Of
pretty sweet
course.
situation to be in. But I just think that movies from the time that they were in like fire trap theaters and and no sound and no color, the name of the game has been getting people through the door. What are you going to show people to get them through the door? And I just think fantasy has this major handicap in that it's not as sharp a hook as other things that you could put out there. Like the last disc that I spun last night was a World War II movie from 1960. And just by way, I mean, how hard would you have to work to sell a World War II movie, like when most of the guys that actually fought it were still alive, and like everybody had this great memory of it? So right there, people can relate to the story that you're telling. And fantasy, by its very nature, is you're just kind of, to a great extent, just kind of making it up from the beginning and making it up as you go along. And not everybody is gonna be able to go along for that journey. I have thought maybe the world would be a better place if more people did. And then I found things in media that kind of like exhaust my imagination. Like I have great respect for what Studio Ghibli does, but at times I just feel like somebody's holding me down and beating me with a sock full of imagination, and it just gets to be too much for me. Now, people that can just go on a magical ride for 2.5 hours, they're probably a superior being to me. And I say what I say with love and envy of what they can do. And I just keep thinking, for somebody that finds something more complicated than an episode of NCIS too hard to relate to. I'm not even sure how you would explain a D&D movie, for instance, to those folks. So I just maybe the ceiling for fantasy stuff is lower than we really want to admit that it is. And
Well, and I oh,
go ahead,
sorry,
please.
go ahead.
No,
Well, I
I
don't
can go on forever. Please go ahead.
No, the only thing I was thinking was that maybe the good thing about living when we live now is
Mhm.
that fantasy is finding a better home in a different medium. I mean, if they
Mhm.
don't do well as box office releases, they can be made for Netflix, they can be made for Prime, they can be made for whatever. And you don't have to have a gigantic audience to still do well. so hopefully that will turn out to be a positive going forward. But yeah, I know that there are more people who were exposed to the fantasy genre because of the big recent hits, the Lord of the Rings and the Game of Thrones people and all that stuff. But Game of Thrones was not a theatrical release either. But it was a very, very gritty, very realistic, for at least the beginning of the show. There wasn't much magic or anything that was accessible, unrelatable. And people do love their gore. People love gore. People love violence, and they,
incest,
so apparently they love their incest. Whatever. But it was, but as long as it's pretty people doing it, I guess it's okay. I'm so mystified by TV.
Rich, privileged people doing incredibly effed up stuff.
Oh, unrelatable. Yeah, for real. Yeah. And so putting that in a fantasy setting is probably going to help the genre because it's a good intro for people who have a hard time understanding how you could relate to people with swords and people with, all that stuff. How could it have anything to do with the way we live our lives? Oh, that's how, because they're backbiting, horrible scoundrels and they're vying for power as though it was the only thing that mattered and eating anyone who gets in their way. Just turned the news off, so that kind of is relatable there. So yeah, so it's hopefully it'll be a good thing.
And the second part of my theory, and again, if I'm wrong, I got the people here to tell me. With the D&D movie in particular, it occurred to me that you're trying to build off of something that's more popular than it's ever been in terms of like numbers and dollars and whatnot else. But you're also talking about like that if it's something that works for you, there's a fairly good chance that it works for you because it's such an intensely personal experience. If you're still at it, you've probably found a good gaming group with a good GM. You've got chemistry. Maybe it's not worth enough. Maybe not enough to live stream the damn thing so that everybody else can watch. But yeah, and you have a GM who knows you, people that know you, and it's like having a really good band. You can finish each other's musical phrases just because you've been playing together so long. And yes, I'm talking about you two when I talk about this. And to me, it's like you're trying to make a movie for a group of people who are all tied in to their own highly individualized experiences. In a way, you're kind of competing against what they get around the kitchen table every week or on Zoom every week. And, that's a hell of a bar to cross. Now, clearly this movie worked for a lot of people, but I just start thinking, that's competition that not a lot of other media face. If they make another, God, what was the last thing I saw they were getting ready to reboot? They get ready to reboot Highlander. They're not competing with the other people that want to chop my head off in our contest for immortality. There's that's its own thing. It doesn't have that immediate competition right in my life. And I kind of wonder if they were just doomed to never be able to make a movie that would be as good for its audience as what they were getting every week in their real lives. Just something that occurred to me.
Yeah. That is very interesting. That is very interesting. Maybe part of the reason why I was so drawn to it is because I'm kind of in a gaming slump. It's been a long time since Origins, and I don't even remember the last time I had a weekly group that actually met every week, and we had, and everybody showed up and everybody had headspace for it and everybody had time for it, and you could really explore the characters. That's been a long time ago. That was I don't even think how many years ago it's been since we could do that. So it filled that void for me because I don't have my group around the table like I did years ago. But yeah, but I absolutely see what you're saying. It's much more about you are trying to replace something that people maybe already have,
Mhm.
and I suppose you could look at it, since it is a D&D canon franchise, it's one of their campaign worlds. You could maybe look at it as something that happens in that world. If you were very into Faerun, if you were very
Mhm.
into Forgotten Realms, you could look at it as like a story of the land and its history, which is kind of what you get from the Lord of the Rings. It's like it's not just about the hobbits. It's not just about Aragorn and
Mhm.
Arwen. It's about
Mhm.
Middle Earth, and
Mhm.
and some of the land is, I mean, to me at least, some of the land is practically a character in
Mhm.
those books, and it comes through in the movie. They took such care with the way that they did the sets and the locations and where they chose to film these things. It really
Mhm.
did feel like it was the story of the land. And most people just it I mean, Forgotten Realms is awesome and everything, and it's been around longer than me, which is a long time, okay?
Mhm.
But it's the land doesn't have the hold on me the way Middle Earth does. Middle Earth is special. So
And then you have the people who are saying, well, if you're going to do a Forgotten Realms, why didn't you go with the Forgotten Realms most well known Drizzt, the Duarden, the Drow,
yeah.
Ranger, and build? I mean, that could be 4, 5, 6 movies right there, just
Mhm.
based on R.A. Salvatore's books,
Mhm.
and maybe that would have drawn more people into it. I don't know. Maybe that was their plan to offshoot that from I don't know,
I
but
suspect that the appearance of the Drow was a problem,
yeah.
and the fact that the race as a whole is stereotypically evil. I
Hmm.
suspect that the lawyers didn't want to touch that with a 10-foot pole, but
I can see that.
that's a guess. I don't know a thing about it. That is a guess.
Mhm. Well, it's really interesting because Chris mentioned Highlander, and another thing that I was thinking about that
Mhm.
was really popular, when I was a kid that came out was
Mhm.
Conan. You
Yeah.
had Arnold Schwarzenegger for 2 movies.
Mhm.
They were worked together, but they didn't, kind of thing. And then you got Aquaman, who decided to, redo it, and that thing, stank worse than my 50-year-old shoe. So, yeah, do you is there a market now for new stuff, or is it better to go back and try to recapture the magic and see? I know Conan. I mean, it was like I don't know if we consider it a cult classic, but
Oh yeah,
most
definitely,
people know Conan. They know Arnold
definitely,
Schwarzenegger.
definitely.
They know that's where he basically got his beginning, unless you saw that one he was in before that for
Mhm.
USA or something. I don't know, but
Yeah.
or Hercules. What I can't. You probably know that one, Chris. I don't know. But is there a place for new stuff, or is it better to just recycle and try to throw it up against the wall and see if it sticks? I don't know. But Conan just leaps out to me as another one that they tried to do
Mhm.
and it didn't work. And I think Highlander, even though I love Henry Cavill, if he's the one I believe who's going to be starring in it,
Mhm.
That's what I heard. Yeah.
yeah, I don't know if it's going to recapture that magic, so to speak,
Mhm.
that the movie, which is a cult classic.
Mhm.
Um, Now, personally, I found the TV show a lot better, but
Mhm.
they had time to develop the Duncan character more than they
Yeah.
did Connor McLeod. I think it works. But I think to me, it worked better in a TV situation more
Mhm.
than a movie. But you got to start somewhere. But I'd be interested to hear you also. Is there room for fantasy now? Or is it all superhero? Is it all horror? Is it all? I mean,
No, I
Well,
mean, I know superheroes have certainly had their day, but the, I mean, my God, they've done more than 20 Marvel movies, and
mhm,
they need to knock it off. They need to just calm down and let something else be the new hotness, because
mhm,
because they need to.
mhm.
So yes, I sincerely hope that there is room for some new stuff, even if
Mhm,
it's new in that they take old novel series or
mhm,
old standalone novels from
mhm,
God, from whenever, and turn them into movies. Um, I think it would be fascinating to see somebody take on Gormenghast, but
mhm,
that, oh my God. I mean, talk about the landscape having its own personality. In that
Mhm.
one, it's the building that has a
mhm,
personality. And I
yeah,
wouldn't even want to think about, I mean, you would need somebody with an H.R. Giger level vision to take on
Mhm.
that. And I don't know who would do it. I don't know who
mhm,
would do it. But but yeah, I mean, I would love to see just some brand new stuff. Brand new world, brand new everything. Something that has something to say about, 2023 and going forward. And
mhm.
I would love to see that. Would love it.
And they did that with The Witcher, a little bit on
Mhm.
Netflix, which I thought was very entertaining.
Mhm.
Robert Jordan's Eye of the World. They did, The Wheel of Time on
Mhm.
Amazon, which is okay, in my
Yeah,
opinion.
I still haven't
But
seen it. I barely remember the books. It's been
mhm,
a long time.
there were a lot of books.
Yes, and they were all this thick, and I
Yeah.
can't.
hmm But
I still have
again,
fond
brother.
memories of the Gen Con Sunday where my dear friend Steve Long, the Saturday Gen Con, my dear friend Steve Long was a writer developer for oh God, what were they? Last Unicorn. And he woke up Sunday as an employee of Wizards of the Coast, and his first assignment was to work on the Wizards on the Wheel of Time RPG, which meant he had to read all the books start to finish.
Oh, bless
Wow.
his sweet
I've
soul.
never seen a more deflated person going from being the Deep Space Nine line developer to the guy who was contractually obligated to read all of the
The
Wheel of
Wheel
Time
of
books.
Time.
Mm. But
I,
growing up,
I
the other movies we had, to go along with that were like Kroll and things
Mm.
like that. That again just didn't. It just kind of laid out there and died, in this whole
yeah, and
fantasy genre.
and I again, to beat a dead horse, I don't
Mhm.
get it. Those
No.
movies are so much freaking fun. I don't
hmm
know why people don't eat them up. I really don't.
mm
Well, at this point, a loyal editor has to talk about it. If anybody else would like an interesting take on why Kroll failed, my dear friend Colm Lundberg writes about Kroll in Fantastic Flops. So keep
Yes,
an eye
that's
out for that to
right.
come out, and you can see
hmm
Colm's heartfelt, loving take about this very unique film.
mm
Well, now in answer to your question, I have to stick to my ceiling figure that fantasy has a ceiling. I'm so glad you brought up Conan. Conan is a perfect example of what we're talking about. Conan succeeds because even though they don't realize it at the time, they have one of the last true movie stars. I mean, whatever else people might want to think of Arnold Schwarzenegger these days, the man is a movie star in the way that John Wayne was a movie star. People want to see his movies, whether he's chasing predators or kindergarten kids.
hmm
Just that screen presence that people will pay big bucks for. And that to me was the key to Conan's success is that you mate fantasy to a genuine movie star. So I think that would be the first step to it, because like to draw a parallel with like the D&D movie. Now, um if you like Chris Pine, I respect that, the same way I respect people who like the New England Patriots and chocolate ice cream. Not everybody's going to agree with me. That's fine. That's fine. And I'm not commenting on his talents, because there are plenty of talented actors who can't open a film. I'm the kind of guy that, like, whoa, it stars Burt Mustin, and I'm going to be there. I'm going to be the only one. I am the Burt Mustin fan club. But, they're just some actors, regardless of their talents, they just can't open a movie. And the thing to me about Chris Pine's career is he had that first big hit writing the Star Trek brand. He's in Wonder Woman, but I don't think anybody knew that until they actually saw the movie. And then like everything else they've tried to make him into, like they tried to make him the new Tom Clancy guy, and they've tried to use they tried to make him the if I remember correctly, the Man from Uncle. They've tried to use him to reboot all these other franchises, and none of them have worked. And there's a part of me that's wondering, and again, this may be terribly unfair to his talents, but I kind of wonder if like Chris Pine is one of those like talented guys that just can't open a movie.
I do not know the answer to that. I do see your point, though. They certainly haven't found a place to shoehorn him into that already exists. Maybe he needs to spend a little time experimenting with scripts, which I would say that's a pretty fair, I think that's a fair thing to say about doing a Dungeons and Dragons movie. I mean, he, according to what I remember seeing in an interview, he didn't take it so much because of D&D, because he didn't know a thing about it. He just liked the script. And and that's the best reason to be in something, if it resonates with you. So I that's another reason that I wish it had done better, because I think it was awesome in it, and I thought he played the role with a lot of heart. And so I don't know. Good luck, Chris Pine. Love you.
I mean, even with Arnold Schwarzenegger, you're looking at him in like Raw Deal, or if you're looking at him as Kindergarten Cop, but you still think, man, that's Conan. You're still looking at him with the big sword. When you look at Chris Pine, you don't go, "Hey, that's James T. Kirk." No, that's always going to be Shaq. You just no matter what's going to happen there. Maybe it will take some big superstar to just say, I want to play Drizzt Duarte, and bam, there you go. That may be what jumpstarts it, but
if Tom Cruise picked up the phone and called Paramount tomorrow, like, "Hey, I want to do a D&D movie," that there you go. They'd be calling the bank. Open up the vault. Tom wants D&D, and
that would be so circular, since he's the one who kind of started the whole hatred D&D craze back in the '80s. Thank you, Tom.
Yeah.
Redeem yourself, man. Redeem yourself.
Did we just cross him with Tom Hanks?
Did
we just cross him with Tom Hanks? Or are we mazes and monstering here? Or?
Yeah, did I my old band.
Some Tom or other. Some Tom.
One Tom. I thought you said Tom Hanks. I'm sorry. Yeah. But Tom Hanks works too.
Can you imagine Tom Hanks calling the studio and saying he wanted to do a D&D movie? Can you imagine? Can you freaking imagine? Oh my God, that would be, how fun would that be?
I'd be paying good money for that.
You know what? If it were another Hanks, Steven Spielberg joint production, as wonderfully obsessed as Stephen King is with like the magic and imagination of childhood, and they made it as much about the kids playing it as like the adventures they were creating, that could be a very sweet film.
Yeah.
And if you make it, you guys owe me.
Steven Spielberg's D&D movie. That would be. Yeah, he could do it. He could do it.
Oh, and speaking of D&D movies, a neglectful editor, I have to definitely give a shout out to our very own Dan Taylor, who talks about the D&D movie in Fantastic Flops. And little spoilers for you lovely people who tune into our podcasts. It begins and ends with Dan imagining all the major studios in Hollywood getting together to play a role-playing game. If I remember correctly, it's like it's the making movies role-playing game, and like you're saving against flopping, and like he walks you through all the positive modifiers that the D&D movie should have had. And if you've ever had the hopeful GM look at you and say, all you got to do is roll a 5 or something like that, I think you will recognize, it's something I think that every gamer will warm to in Dan's description of it.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
That and the cocaine party that led to the creation of Streets of Fire that Justin Achille invented in the Streets of Fire place. You know, like the cocaine fueled party that must have led to the green lighting of this picture, to the more tickly things I got in this batch. So.
But it's interesting to see, like Vin Diesel, you know, is another name that comes to me. You know, he's played D&D since he was a kid, and I believe he for the anniversary edition, I think he wrote the foreword for the book, if I'm not mistaken on that. You know,
cool is that?
Yeah, and Joe Manganiello, I never can pronounce his last. Thank you. Yeah. From what I understand, he's picking up the Dragonlance campaign and making that into like a TV show. You know, that's the rumor that's out there now. So there is mainstream artists and talent that's out there that loves this genre, you know, and world
turned upside down moment. One of the last Gen Cons that I went to before they threw me out of the industry. Joe Manganiello showed up in person for Gen Con, and it was back during that window where Ben Affleck was going to make his own Batman movie, and Manganiello was going to be in there as the main bad guy, Deathstroke. Yeah. So here's the guy who's going to be the villain in the next big budget Batman movie, and I spotted him way back in the line to get Margaret Weiss's autograph. And the thing,
awesome.
He was so easy to spot because he was in 10 times better shape than anybody else in that line and twice as tall as anybody in that line.
Yeah, don't get me started on the whole Deathstroke's not a Batman villain; he's a Titans villain. But that's another conversation for another show.
It's another reason to want to punch Zack Snyder in the face.
If you guys are going to start Batman nerding out, I'm going to go get a snack or something, because
no, that's a completely different genre. But you know, but it's going to take somebody like, you know, you're right, a mainstream person to just pick up the mantle and say, hey, I want to do this, and maybe that will get everybody over the hump. You know,
I know Henry Cavill is certainly doing his best. He's, you know, he did The Witcher. He wants to do Highlander, and I heard he was going to be producing a Warhammer 40K show of some kind. I don't know whether it was a movie or a TV show or what it was, but I don't even know if it's, you know, I just heard the one headline about it. I don't know if it's actually going to happen, but you know, he's one of us. He's a nerd boy, you know, and God bless him. I don't know how a nerd managed to look like that. That's maybe he's the reason the rest of us are so doughy and short, because he's like 6 foot, God knows what, and made of muscles, and the rest of us are left with whatever we could get in the line. But yeah, he is certainly doing his best to be that guy. So more power to him. I hope he does it.
And just sitting here thinking, you know, a lot of the fantasy movies that when we were young and have recently come out too start falling into that cult movie category. That and it seems like that and horror films are the two to just kind of migrate to the cult classic type things. I mean, take for example Princess Bride. You know, incredible, funny movie. It had everything that you wanted in a movie. Honestly, it had the humor. It had some action.
You know what I think is the key in all that? We've talked about how a fantasy has this approachability factor to it. They are so smart to lead off with that whole segment with Fred Savage and I don't want to call him Peter Falk. They're so smart to open with that because that is so sweet and funny and charming. You're totally in for whatever comes next. Genius.
Yeah, it's just things like that have moved into that category. So there is popularity for it. Maybe not when it comes out in the beginning, but people will go, "Hey, did you ever watch Princess Bride?" No, well, you should watch it. You know, take your girlfriend, boyfriend to it. You know, it has it has romance, it has action, it has comedy, it has it's not inconceivable. You know, it's just
It's got real sword fighting in it.
It's got real sword fight in it, you know.
I mean, like real, like by people who know what the hell they're doing, like not stage fighters, actual swordsmen which is,
and then
that's not something you see every day.
No, and then you stick mainstream actors in there like Billy Crystal. At the time he was very, still very popular. He just kind of makes these little mix in those cameos. And it made a good film. But Beastmaster is another one that kind of comes to mind. And I think there was a sequel, kind of like Highlander 2, but we try to forget about it.
There was no Highlander 2.
Okay, yeah, I think it was just a bad dream. Like
there
was Bobby in Dallas.
I don't think you could fully appreciate number 2 till you've seen part 4.
There's a part 4.
Oh yeah.
Okay, that's going
on. No, there isn't. No. No, I refuse. No.
But it's just little movies like that that they build up, and it just kind of just lays there, and that's what just movies like that got me thinking. All these 9 times, or maybe I'll change that. 7 times out of 10, a fantasy movie is not going to do as well as they expect it to do. You have your Lord of the Rings and things like that are the example of the other 3, but it's just really sad because it may be just a reality in the world nowadays, but a lot of people just kind of just stay in their stuff. They don't let their imaginations flow as like they should. And that's a shame, because I go into every movie thing, even if the critics say it's bad, if I'm going to go see it, I'm going in with an open mind. My joke was I always go in on the Marvel movies as a 10-year-old kid. I do the exact same thing when it comes to fantasy. When I opened up my first Dungeons and Dragons box, I want to see the sword fight. I want to see the wizard cast spells. Yes. I want the damsel to be rescued. I want the dragon to be slayed. And that's why I go to the movies, because I want to take myself out of my normal life and put myself into the hero's position. And to me, fantasy, that's what does it for me. No other genre really does that except for fantasy to me.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I will never understand the mindset of people who want to watch TV shows. I mean, imagine coming home from your job at a coffee shop and watching a TV show about people who work at a coffee shop. It's just, it boggles my mind. I will never understand. If it's a show or a book or anything that doesn't give you something you can't already see every day of your life, what are you doing it for?
Right.
Yeah, I will never understand. I am 100% with you right there. If it doesn't have, robots or spaceships or dragons or sword fights, I mean, I could just go watch the news, I mean, I don't, anyway, I made my point. You get it.
And to do a flip side of that, the people who have the imagination, who have that love and desire, nowadays, you could go on and do a podcast. Your friends could hook up a video camera and, you could record your game, and people like me are going to tune in looking for, hey, I'm going to search for a guy who's playing Dungeons and Dragons, playing, Curse of Strahd, blah.
Sure, and it's out there.
Games, and it's out there. And on that side of things, it's just amazing. And I think maybe that's where where the spark needs to come from. Is people who are doing the online thing, who are doing the podcast, who are sitting here talking about it like the 3 of us are right now. It's people like that eventually are going to say, I want to see this on the big screen. While I can still see things on the big screen while there is a big screen.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's a lot easier to make anything visual than it used to be. I mean, just the cost of the equipment used to be so prohibitive not that long ago. And now, if the 3 of us decided we were going to make a movie, we could absolutely do it. We could make it with our iPhones. It's so within reach now. I mean, we're even able to do special effects if we knew how to use the software, which I personally do not, but some people do. I mean, it's not some impossible skill. It's not a complete pipe dream like it was when we were in our 20s.
You two could be the Polonia brothers.
But even back then, when we went to move, like I want to use it for another example of Harry Hamlin in Clash of the Titans. with the Harryhausen and the stop motion clay miniatures. To me, when I was a kid, that was awesome. You know, you got to see, you know, Medusa come to life and everything like that. And, you know, special effects have just come so far from those days, you know, from the TV shows. You know, it's amazing to see that, you know, two people in their backyard, and they're not jumping off of roofs and wrestling anymore. They're actually making movies, you know.
I have a question. Mm-hmm. Have they truly come that far? Because to me, there's a lot more reality in like a Harryhausen little clockwork owl than there is, like, say, a modern Disney production where two people are having a conversation in front of a house and even the grass is computer generated. You know, it's like you can do so much more, but I believe it so much less.
Yeah, I know that there are a lot of people who feel that way. There are a lot of people who get very put off or kicked out by the CGI, you know, and I personally am not one of those people. You know, I enjoy CGI. I enjoy the craftsmanship of it. I mean, even if it doesn't enhance the movie, if I'm not enjoying the movie, I can tune it out and watch the pretty pictures, you know? And but I think I'm in the minority there. I think there are a lot of people who do have a real tone problem with too much CGI. And I feel very fortunate that I'm not one of them. I still get very dazzled by the sparklies and seeing every single blade of grass and all that stuff. You know, I like that stuff. So I can be the counterpoint to that one.
And I don't hate people who like CGI.
I know.
I was reading an interview with the director of Loki season 2, and he was just so rapturous that they got to build actual sets for this season. And I'm like, oh yes, you're of my heart, sir.
Yeah, and all that gorgeous old equipment that they found and repurposed. And I love the look of Loki. I love the 50s aesthetic. Love it.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Oh, yes. Well, let's see here. So they're rebooting Highlander, we mentioned that. Anything else on the fantasy horizon you guys are particularly excited about or think may have some potential? Or because we haven't had a chance to mention the Rings of Power on Amazon. I'm sure that they will be back pounding on my windows, reminding me to watch it again soon when the second season comes back after all the strikes. So they're going to be redoing Harry Potter again from the start to the finish.
I don't know what the hell that's about, but
yeah.
So
how much money does she need? How much does she need? Can she not?
Well, this definitely seems to be more of a Warner Brothers thing. I definitely get the impression that, like, she's not saying no to a couple of new vacation houses, but this really seems to be something more driven by Warner's post buyout debt than anything else.
That makes sense.
You mentioned, you mentioned Rings of Power. I watched it. You know, I'm a huge Lord of the Rings fan, so I love Tolkien's work. And I watched it. I went in again with my open mind, like, okay, this is not going to be the Silmarillion. This is not going to be the that Tolkien had written, you know, that he never got published, or, you know, the Lost Files or whatever they're calling it. And to me, it was entertaining. I think that they forced a lot down our throats, you know, of some of the history and everything, or changed a little bit of it from what I understand. And it's just like The Hobbit. I think The Hobbit, if they just made one movie out of it all, would have been great. I think by stretching it lost the luster. You know, you're speaking of CGI. I love seeing Smaug. Don't get me wrong. And Cumberland's voice was incredible. But I think it got way overboard with Legolas, all the leaping and the, you know, it lost something along the way by trying to stretch it out. I'm hoping that they've kind of refocused now that they're bringing people together on Ring of Power, that it's going to be a more centralized story. Does that make any sense? Because
No,
that's just the way I think it was kind of all over the place, which typically first seasons usually are, but I'm just hoping that they refocus. I know there's a lot of hate out there for Amazon and, everything like that. I found it entertaining. But I just hope that they're not going to force everything down our throat and just ruin it and give it a black mark for the rest of its, existence.
Well, what did you feel that they were forcing down our throats?
I think does it Galadriel? I don't think, if you look at Kate Blanchett's performance in the Lord of the Rings and the way that the new actress, and I'm sorry, I don't remember her name off the top of my head. To me, I didn't get the same feel. I know it's a different actress in a different play, but I think that they were, I may not say forced down my throat, might not be the best terminology. I don't think it was true to that character that was already established. But again, that part of the Tolkien history, I am not overly familiar with. I just have a general knowledge of it, and I'm glad for people to say, Skip, you're wrong, you suck, it's really good, it's right along with everything. But I just didn't get this. I didn't get the feel it's the same character. Does that make any sense?
Well, I do see what you're saying. I personally chalk that up to the fact that she's a couple thousand years younger. And, it's like the difference between me at 15 and me at 55. I mean, I'm going to look at the world as a very, very different way from those two perspectives. And I just feel that Galadriel has been through the same thing, because that woman has seen some stuff. I mean, she has seen, I mean, you have to remember that what she was looking at and the perspective that she had in the Rings of Power show is so different. So different. I mean, she has seen so much come and go and seen so much loss, and I did feel like one thing that Rings of Power did have some respect for was the fact that war should be avoided at all costs if you can possibly do it, because the costs are so high. And that was definitely something that Tolkien was on board with, because he was a vet, and his experiences definitely were part of the things that he wrote for the Lord of the Rings. And it didn't bug me as much as it did you, clearly, because I was willing to just accept, okay, this is baby Galadriel. This is a woman who is very young, very hot-tempered, very much on fire with what she believes in and what she thinks is important. And the Galadriel that we get in the Lord of the Rings is a Galadriel who is, even though she doesn't look it, she's a very elderly woman. And she has, she's just ready to, she's about to leave. She's about to leave Middle Earth. She's been there and done that. She's almost a ghost in her own forest by the time we meet her. And, so that in particular didn't bug me. I actually really enjoyed Rings of Power. I might be the only one, but I liked it a lot.
I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it for what it was. I don't want to say the Mary Sue syndrome, with the way that they was presented, like Daisy Ridley was in the Star Wars, the last three movies. But I just got that you're supposed to like it. She's just in your face all the time, when there's more of a story, I think, than just Galadriel's journey to where she was. And my hope is that they start focusing on, and they did a little bit, but I think the overall story arc maybe this season was her. And if I'm wrong, that I'm perfectly, man enough to admit that I'm wrong. But I want to see something more built in the future seasons that actually tie all this stuff together when Sauron does what Sauron does,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I don't think it's a matter of right or wrong, honestly. I think that, everybody's entitled to think whatever they like about stuff. I'm down with that. I just, for the most part, the way you were talking about, you go into this stuff with as open of a mind as possible, that you want you want to be a 10-year-old kid for again. And
Mhm,
I can really understand that. I
mhm,
want movies to be good. I want books
mhm,
to be good. I want TV shows to be good. I want to enjoy them. I want them to not kick me out and
mhm,
aggravate the crap out of me, which they sometimes do. Um,
mhm.
but that's not what I'm looking for. I don't go into watching movies because I'm looking forward to picking them apart.
Right.
Sometimes you can't help it. Sometimes you really can't help it. They just sometimes you're just like, "Dude, he's wearing plate mail. That's not happening."
Right.
But and
Mhm,
other times they just don't bother to to develop any characters. I mean,
mhm,
like you were saying that the CGI can kick you out. I have a lot of trouble with movies that aren't interested in telling me a story. I
mhm,
mean, I can forgive a lot if I'm interested in seeing what's going to happen next. And I don't know. I Maybe that's the problem that fantasy movies have is they don't have the twist that they need. The dragon's going to be slain. The
mhm,
princess is going to get rescued. Arthur is going to become king.
mhm.
That the hobbits are going to throw the ring. It's
Right.
going to be okay. Um, Maybe that's what we need. Maybe we need some anti-hero fantasy movies, yeah, something like that to stir things up a little. Um,
Yeah,
And
I
that's
Game of
don't
Thrones
know.
did a little bit of that.
that's been the one thing that's always taken me out of fantasy is because as a creator, if you're dealing in like more realistic genres, which I guess would be all the other genres, because wouldn't they be by default more realistic? But
Mhm,
anyway, is there's a certain discipline of it. If I'm writing a hard-boiled detective fiction, there are limits to the ways that my hero can get out of this situation. But bad fantasy, and let's be honest, there's bad fantasy out there. It's just this constant abuse of the fact that there are no rules.
mhm.
Like one of the moments where I unwisely tested my marriage was when I was talking to my beloved Potterhead wife and referred to the series as Harry Potter and the Deus Ex Machina.
Oh,
Wow.
that was unwise.
Yeah, 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 yeah. But she knew I had a smart mouth on me before she signed up for this. But
She
but
did indeed.
that there like one of the riff tracks of one of the Harry Potter movies where like what's his name, the kind of guy that looks like the Hagrid brings out like the big flying horse thing, and Harry Potter jumps on and has this big CGI race around Hogwarts and through the water. And Bill Corbett of Riff Tracks gets off this line like, hey, when do the rest of us get to ride it? Sorry, only top billed characters get this experience. It's just so, as a writer, it would take me an incredible amount of discipline not to just say, well, he had a spell of Bingle Blorp ready to go, and that fixed everything at the end.
Yeah, Bingle Blorp is so OP, man.
Oh yeah. I mean, I'm more of a Croty robot. All right, I'm doing fireballs. Is it helping?
I
Mhm.
die. I.
Yeah.
Oh goodness me! Well, it's 58 minutes, so we should probably be saying
Oh, so
good
it
night,
is.
Wow.
so that we can get back to our evil works and decent people can get decent sleep and do their decent things. But but Skip, I know you had something that you wanted to talk about, so let me put the plug up there so that people can see it. Tell us about Symphony Entertainment Gaming Arts.
Well, it's a gaming industry. We're talking about fantasy today, but I'm going to switch a little bit to horror. Horror role playing, all types of games, Call of Cthulhu, Vampire the Masquerade, some of the new stuff that's out. And I've been personally involved with Bridget in Symphony Entertainment. Now I've jumped on board with them after Chaosium Con last year. If you are into the horror genre and you are looking for a just to watch a group that really enjoys role playing, who really just decides to get down and dirty when it comes to horror experiences, check out Symphony Entertainment. I love the folks there. It's as I described on our Discord chat one day, it's like a family. And when you come on board and you start watching and you want to and they encourage you to participate, jump in on live feeds on Twitch, things like that. It's just absolutely, it's an incredible experience. I cannot give props enough to Bridget Jeffries, who runs this thing. She's built it from ground up, and it's just absolutely incredible. So anytime I can wave the flag for her, I'm going to do it. And just check it out. I think Chris has posted the Facebook site. That's where you can begin. There's a Discord channel that she does Twitch chat. Like I said, Call of Cthulhu, all the horror genre you can think of, and some that you maybe not even ever heard of. We've recently done Old Gods of Appalachia, which was absolutely incredible. So if you're into that horror genre, check it out. And it's just very entertaining, and the folks there are just absolutely incredible. I can't thank them enough for letting a little old guy like me to jump on board and be part of the mass experience that they are providing.
Well, thank you. Yes, definitely check that out. Lynn, do you have anything you want to plug or talk about other than your awesome Curse of the Cat People essay coming out in Fantastic Flops?
Yeah, that won't be long till that's out. I have some feelers out for a fiction anthology that I hope to be a part of sometime soon, but I'm not going to talk about that until I find out more. That's still in very early stages, but other than that, yeah, that's it. I'm excited about the Fantastic Flops essay. I hope y'all will enjoy it because I had a good time writing it.
And I'm honored to publish it, and I look forward to sharing it with all you folks. Now, we certainly want to thank Skip On Air for his generous pledge that made Fantastic Flops happen. And we have one remaining podcast in this series with our superbackers. And this is the point in the show when normally I would tell you when the next one is going to happen. But the thing about it is our remaining superbacker we haven't been able to corral is not only one of the most generous backers we've ever had, he's also one of the busiest human beings around. And if you live in the Northern Virginia area and you love cinema, then you must have been to an Alamo Draft House at some point. And you certainly know wonderful annual events like Dismember the Alamo, Alamo's annual awesome Halloween bash. And all these wonderful things happen because of their creative director, Mr. Brian Loy, who we were very honored to have his Knife Plus Heart essay in Transgressive Horror. Well, Brian is our last scheduled podcast guest, but Brian is phenomenally busy because they have yet another crazy horror movie marathon, December to Dismember, coming up in time for Christmas with crazy Christmas horror films. So as soon as we may have to trank him and like drag him here, but as soon as we corral Brian, we'll be bringing him in and oh my God, I'm so looking forward to chatting with cinema about him for a solid hour. So you don't want to miss it. And for those of you that would like to know the date when that goes live, if you haven't already, then please go over to Facebook and just give a like and a follow to the Ghost Show Press page. There's your URL. And as soon as we have a date confirmed, that'll be the first place it's posted. And then you can join us for what I'm sure will be just an absolutely amazing night of discussion of things cinema. And we certainly had one tonight. So thank you, Lynn, for joining us. Thank you, Skip, for making all this happen. And until next time, everybody, this has been The Ghost Show.